like him being over here though. I'm barricading just in case. Holy crap. It's not where you're supposed to be.
Oh, stick him in the wall. Yeah, keep him in the corner. I like it here. Cammy's just
Hey, he's shoving me in a locker. Stop.
Dude, what the fuck?
Oh my god.
You're just getting shoved in a locker.
Oh, it can be so much better, and the effort level's still gonna feel low.
That's hilarious.
Hey friends, I know sunrising was just mentioned in the TWAB. We'll talk about that another day. For now, I want to talk about how, as I play more of Onslaught, I dislike it. The pain points of this activity are starting to outweigh the fun factor, and trust, I have been having so much fun. To be very clear for the comment section, you can like this activity. It can be one of your favorites. Don't let me take that away from you. I'm just acknowledging that this was not built for my kind of player, and I can already see that. But even despite that, there is some fun to be had before I lose all replayability. I mainly have fun mostly through trying different builds, different team compositions, exploring different synergies, etc. Trying to not only play better, but sometimes just be stupid for sake of doing something fun. And YouTube recommended videos have done a great job of that. Some, I'm not going to call it false advertising because I do the same thing in the PvP sphere where I say like, this is the best Golden Gun build or something like that. And of course there's a comment that's like, Golden Gun isn't competitive, just run 3 Void Titans. And you're right. When you want to get something done in PvP like Trials, maybe 3 Void Titans is better than almost anything I suggest, even if the build is good and competitive. And that's kind of the same thing here. YouTube will throw some videos at me saying, this insane Golden Gun build in Onslaught tears through everything. And the thing is, that's not false advertising. It does tear through everything. The problem is, in this game mode, the limitations of Onslaught allow almost any high-level build to tear through everything. And is that a good game balance? Maybe. It depends on who you're asking. But to me, I feel like I've learned this activity good enough to essentially optimize the fun out of it to where it just feels like an auto-scroller. Even considering the nightmare wave permutations, it's still solved to a point where I'm just sitting there waiting for the midnight coup to drop when I'm playing optimally. And unfortunately, because nothing is craftable, I do have to weigh my loot per hour with the fun. So sometimes a really dumb build I have to use sparingly because I don't know for sure how it's going to hold up past wave 30, which is one of the limitations of this mode. The difficulty doesn't ramp up fast enough for you to truly feel like this is a testing ground for builds because you're held off by waiting at least 20 minutes before you know if the fun build is also competitive. Normally in these tower defense style games, you're very weak at the beginning and you fight slightly stronger enemies, and as you upgrade your character, upgrade your defenses, the enemies get much more difficult. In this one, no, not really, it doesn't scale like that. In fact, the upgrades barely do anything, except for of course the decoys, but I could practically not spend anything the entire run and be perfectly okay. A lot of them don't do anything noteworthy when you're playing the most optimal setups. The next limitation is the lack of desire to master this game mode. You can speedrun it, of course. The waves aren't as random as you think. There's rules to each of these permutations, and there's patterns that are observable that you can exploit to make your run go faster. I think all the players dropped a really good guide on this if you want to check that other YouTube video out. If I remember that, I'll link it in the description. But in my opinion, I find Onslaught to be too little of a challenge to be interesting and too long and random to care about speedrunning. So it's at that exact zone where I just don't really care about it at all. Funny enough, in the past, I put a very high effort level into Gambit, and that was something I cared about mastering, and I kept at it for a very long time compared to this game mode. And yes, there's a player versus player element to Gambit, but it's also PvE. It's essentially learning a perfect speed run, and if your opponent is also very good at that, it starts to become a chess match where everything's out on the table and your team's build synergy and execution really matter. I hope those explanations were sufficient, the limitations, dislikes, etc., for why I dislike Onslaught, and why I'm probably not going to continue playing it unless it gets a significant update or an overhaul in the future, which I kinda doubt because of how close they were to making Gambit incredible over all those years ago, and never really revisited it in a way that made it significantly better. Now, I completely understand and acknowledge that this game is not built for extremely high skill caliber players, unless it's like the odd contest mode raid where it seems like Bungie didn't want it to be that hard, but then the players like me are craving that difficulty and we're like, no, 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 no. This is a starting point. It could be even harder, like Last Wish back in the day. And the thing is, selectable difficulty is a thing, so it doesn't completely lock everybody out of participating, but that's just Bungie's design choice. I acknowledge that they've stuck to their guns and kept a pretty consistent pattern over the years, so I shouldn't be surprised. I do question that balancing scheme though, because couldn't it just be selectable, optional, extreme difficulty for no extra reward? And then on top of that, the lack of loot determinism and this loot treadmill in the game make no sense to me compared to other looter shooters in MMOs. Players are going to play the things they like to play. You need the loot to make builds to make the things you like to play more enjoyable. Why is that such a strange concept in this community? That's not really a tangent, by the way. It goes into why I dislike Onslaught, because I feel forced to be in here to get loot to go back to play PvP to enjoy PvP more. And if I want to get out sooner, I have to play optimally. And if I run out of fun, dumb builds and they're not productive enough, efficient enough to farm loot, well then I'm needlessly in here. It's definitely not the end of me playing Onslaught. It is a good build testing ground. I just wish that we were able to start at wave 30, even for no additional rewards, so I can further test builds to see what kind of like combat tier those builds sit in without having to commit to an extra 20 minutes. Overall, as far as like Destiny's activity offerings, I like the direction Bungie is going with the Coil. Although with both Coil and Onslaught, there are cracks to that activity that are very evident to me, and I know long term they're just not offering the replayability I want. But if I had to choose between each formula, the best version of this tower defense or the best version of the Coil, I'm going the Coil. We're also getting a Pantheon boss rush activity soon enough, and I think long term in Destiny, if they make some sort of activity that is like the Coil and Pantheon mixed together across all the different landscapes of Destiny's greatest hits, then I think it'll be a banger. The closing note for this video is the background gameplay you see, which is a triple behemoth build that spams ice the entire time. And although I don't think it's as effective as double tether one well, infinite ammo off of the Cenotaph, pre-spawn everything, that requires a lot more effort, execution, and experience. The execution on this behemoth setup is pretty low execution. It's just spamming ice over and over again. But you definitely still need that experience and knowledge to be able to prevent a wipe from mostly Shriekers appearing and then maybe not hitting the requisite boss damage you need from not switching Synthoceps or optimizing your behemoth rotations. But there are workarounds in the future, and I will revisit this build that is more optimized for complete new players and walk them through going from 0 to 50 in as little effort as possible, because I truly believe that this is an easy execution build. I recorded this late at night, so forgive if I made some mistakes recording this commentary or the next explanation. Also, don't try to use this build against Fallen, just requeue. So this is the insane, no-brain behemoth build. Seriously, you don't even have to think about it. You can make so many mistakes and still salvage a run. Just one behemoth super pop. Any mistake your team makes, and you're back in the fight. It all starts with Tectonic Harvest. If you shatter a stasis crystal, it makes a shard that flies towards you with Whisper of Conduction, and it refills your melee. Your melee ability is going to be Howl of the Storm, which creates a row of crystals. So you can break the crystals, Tectonic Harvest activates, Conduction collects shards, and you have the Howl of the Storm again. Whisper of Hunger gives you more energy, so it's a perfect loop. Other than that, you have Whisper of Chains, so that your Howl of the Storm crystals, all stasis crystals, give you damage resist. And Whisper of Rhine, stasis shards give you overshield and health. Very, very useful. For the mods, I'm going to let Manstral take the feedback fence explanation here, but we have triple melee kickstart to fully help replenish the melee with 3 charged up for 6 charged with light.
Feedback Fence is very strong because you might be wondering, why do we have so many melee kickstart and charged up? Well, if you remember, Feedback Fence actually got buffed to where each melee hit gives you an armor charge. If you have stacks on stacks, you get 2. So not only does your Howl of the Storm melee give you armor charges, every time you break those crystals, you're getting armor charges from elemental charge. So you don't need enemies, but when you do, it's just completely brain dead. You have 9 melee kickstarts at all times because each melee kickstart and each armor charge counts as pretty much their own melee kickstart. So it doesn't matter what percentages. That is,
I'm gonna cut you off there. In Titan terms, throw the crystals, shoot the crystals, you get more energy. It's good. Just punch things with your heroic crystals.
Ice.
Okay, finally,
That's what our
we
brains
have
think.
the artifact. Artifact has Pillar of Ice, defeating a frozen target spawns a stasis crystal, and this matters so much for keeping the loop going. Then Hail of the Storm, shattering frozen targets and stasis crystals. Release a shard of ice and slows targets. It's kind of like the stasis turret, if you know what that is, whenever you break the heroic crystal. It's really overpowered. I think this build is future-proofed and will be great, even in whatever the new expansion is going to be in 50 days. But, yeah. The bottom 3 stats don't matter, but I do recommend Discipline. I will say, while having 100 Strength, it matters a little bit if you're like 99% charged and already in the slide animation. Past that, I think this was a really, really quick explanation. There's so many intricate details that you could min-max and pay attention to, but at the end of the day, think like a Titan. Throw the row of ice, shoot the row of ice, get it all back, punch things. Special finisher if you're spamming.
Brain power, exactly. All the brain power doesn't come while playing the game. It comes while setting up the build. It's very mod heavy, and that is unfortunate. But the benefit is that you just turn your brain off.
Let's talk weapons for a sec. I use Indebted Kindness with Deconstruct Lead from Gold just for ammunition reasons, and it's perfect. If you put the row of crystals, you can shoot beside the row of crystal and it'll blow up the whole thing. Then my other gun is just an auto-loading auto rifle that has Hake Breach. Not necessary, you just need a weapon that breaks crystals and reloads quick, or reloads automatically. It literally doesn't matter what it is. The final weapon recommendation is Dragon's Breath, but one of your Titans needs to be on Xenophage for the rare Shrieker round. Even the Tormentor gets beat up by the ice, so you don't really need to do that. And for boss waves, it's Tractor Cannon and 3 of you just fly at the boss with supers and throw crystals everywhere.
You need 1 or 2 Dragon's Breath on the boss, so the crystals blow up from that interaction, and it's very easy. One more thing, though, is that against the Tormentors, the ice from your super goes through the nerf of Tormentors, so it'll do normal damage. If you use your normal melees, it won't, but it still does eventually whittle them down. But you want to save your supers for Tormentors, but it doesn't matter. Use them, goes faster.
Okay, I think that's a good summary here. Thanks for the assist, Minstrel.
So at the end of the day, no matter how much or how little we explain it, you're just shooting ice. There's nothing more. Pretend like there's no enemies. Everything dies. Focus on the big health bar. Everything around them dies. Use your super, get 7 fat orbs, and profit.